Getting a flu shot is one of the most important things you can do to stay healthy this year. Flu shots are available and free to University of Alabama students at sites across campus and at the UA Student Health Center and Pharmacy. Check out our schedule at cchs.ua.edu/flu shot. Call 205-348-6262 for a flu shot appointment at the Student Health Center, or walk up Monday through Friday from 4 to 4:45 p.m.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
Happy Sunday. Y'all are listening to Fit2BTide with Sheena and Whitney on 90.7 The Capstone. And I just realized that I said y'all. I do say the word y'all. I don't normally say that in the welcome, but anyways, hello y'all. If you're listening to our podcast and you've wondered, where is this show recorded? We're in the South.
We are in the South, baby. Roll Tide.
So I had to put that out there.
Yeah.
But, it's crazy because by the time you're listening to this, we're a week out from the end of spring break. Mm-hmm. So even though spring break is over, we are still technically in March. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of crazy to think about that. The weather has been all over the place. We've had some cold and hot and this and that. And I don't know.
It's been I saw this meme, I think, the only social media I have is Pinterest, which isn't really like social media. You just look at stuff. But I saw this meme and it was man, the weather's like the Powerball, just spitting out numbers, anywhere. Mm-hmm. Just kind of it goes from 26 degrees all the way to 80 in a week. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Yes.
I love the warm weather, though.
I do, too. I'm not going to lie. The pollen... Mm-hmm. I get the most grossed out when I see puddles of water and then you see the yellow pollen. Yeah, that's just kind of pulled there like tie-dye.
Kind of nasty. I'm not going to lie, it's kind of nasty. And I will say, I think the pollen has gotten better. We had that couple of weeks before spring break where I woke up and Monday morning went to work and it was my car was just yellow and it was covered. But I don't feel like the pollen's as bad now. I think it's always 3 weeks in March, it's super heavy. And then once we get around to April, it rains a little bit more and it's not as bad. But yeah, I'm happy that we're in spring because I love this downhill slope of you've had spring break, the days are longer, the time has changed, it gets warmer, and then when you get home from work, you have extra time in the day. Instead of it being dark and gloomy, you can sit outside, you can go for a walk, you could grill out, and you can spend a little time outside.
I agree.
I love it.
Wholeheartedly. Now, I can't remember if I mentioned this on air one of the last times we recorded or if it was offline, but I've started going back to working out really early in the morning.
Right. Yeah.
So my routine is waking up 4 a.m., 4:15 a.m., and then I work out at 5. And a lot of times I will go on Reddit to look ahead of time to see what the template is for the workout that I'm doing. And then I get on these other topics that other people are posting about, and I have been trying to stop using an energy drink before my workouts because I realize that my heart rate will not recover. It just stays in this orange and red zone. And so I was how about black coffee? And so I was doing a little Reddit search about coffee before this particular workout, and they were talking about people who will straight up be drinking coffee on the treadmill as they're doing stuff like this. A dude that had a Starbucks, and I was this is so interesting. Well, I was I'll have my coffee, but I wasn't going to drink it on the treadmill, but I literally was drinking my coffee up until getting on the treadmill right at that moment this morning, and #regret.
Really?
Yeah, and it was more so, it's not what you might think would be the issue with having black coffee, but it was getting some side stitches during runs, which we had to do a lot of runs on on an incline. Yeah. But I don't think I'm going to do it again.
I'm definitely a coffee drinker only in the mornings, and I have 1 to 2 cups, and it kind of depends on how I'm feeling that day. I could probably stop drinking coffee and be okay. I don't really use it for the caffeine. That's the only time I really ever drink caffeine. I like green tea, but I don't drink it as often. It's pretty low. But I just love the smell and taste and the warmth of coffee in the morning that I just don't think I could probably do caffeine free, maybe decaf, but I can't imagine taking it with me to work out because I would think I'd get a little too hot, and it does. I'm quite talkative in the morning once I've had coffee. Like, it's kind of funny because I don't really say a lot when I wake up, but I just go straight to the coffee and start drinking it. And then it's like, oh, well, here's what we're going to do today. I have this really great idea. And then it's just, I talk a lot, kind of like I am now. But I don't think I could do it working out. That's why the pre-workout drinks and these energy drinks, I think it would mess my heart up.
Yeah. No, I think if you ask my doctor,
Still recovering.
He's like, I think you are messing your heart up. So we'll see. I might try to go stimulant free.
That'd be tough, but you could do it.
I had to share that story.
It's a funny thing. I know we're going to come up on a break here, but I don't eat as much sugar as I used to, and my body has gotten really sensitive to sugar. Like, I can eat it, but I can't eat like the amounts of sugar. And over the break, I had like almond bark and pretzels, and I was like, let's make dip some pretzels. It's March, it's not Christmas time, but let's dip some pretzels. The husband really likes it, so I was like, okay, this will be fun. And it's so good, that salty and that sweet. Well, I kind of went overboard, and I remember I was just sitting there and I was like eating them as I go. I physically felt sick. About 5 minutes later, or maybe even less, I felt like my heart rate was up. I felt physically nauseous. I felt sick, and I realized like it was almost like I had overdosed on sugar. Yeah, it was that bad because I hadn't had it in so long. So I feel you though,
dude. The things that we do to our body,
really, seriously.
That's a good segue into our topic for today. But before we tell you what that is, we got to take a break.
We do.
You are listening to Fit2BTide with Sheena and Whitney on 90.7 The Capstone.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
Welcome back. You're listening to Fit2BTide with Sheena and Whitney, and we are post-spring break, and the weather's been pretty random.
Yes.
And we're entering into April pretty soon, and yeah, it's just been good times. I love springtime. I think it's my favorite.
I agree. I do enjoy the fall. I think I've talked to you about fall smells before.
Yeah.
But
pumpkin spice.
Yes. And like burning leaves or just like cookout types. I don't know. Something about burning wood. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm not really that much of an outdoorsy person. But
you like the smells that remind you of that type of.
I do. Yeah, because it's like, people are getting together. They're doing something festive.
And you know what's funny about that? I don't like it. And I'll tell you why I don't like it, because I know winter's coming and I hate winter.
Oh, see, I can understand that.
Mm-hmm. But spring is like, yay, we made it through and it's sunny. It's going to be warmer, and I hate cold weather. So, but I can see how people like fall. I get that.
But no, spring is nice. Mm-hmm. And this is just a great time of the year. April is always fun. Mm-hmm. What is the saying? April showers bring May flowers.
That's right. We're going to get a lot of rain. And also, we'll get some bad weather. I'm sure we'll have James Spann on TV. He'll be talking about the weather because it's just something to be aware of. But we're in March, so we're not going to worry about it yet.
And March, if we have not mentioned it before this month, is Women's History Month.
Yeah.
And so we thought, you know what? In the name of women, we're going to talk about women's health issues today. And
in the name of women.
Yes, we're going to do it. But I know you and I, we had both done some research about some main health concerns for women and some other things related to our expertise areas of fitness and nutrition. But I wanted to share an article with you, Whitney, that I had gotten from UC Health. One of the things that they had mentioned in regards to women's health issues and some of the top 5 concerns, the number one killer of women is heart disease.
Yeah.
And I know I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah, we have.
And especially when we've had our wonderful guest, Nika, who is like a regular with us. But, when it comes to heart disease, I think a lot of people, unless they are like us and there's a reason to research this and talk about it, may be unaware because we kind of see it as a man's disease. Like, we think about that dramatic, like, a man having a heart attack in a diner or in their sleep or whatever the case may be, but it's the women,
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's the silent killer. Is that what they call it? It's the silent killer. And I never knew that growing up until I started, researching and learning about things in this field, learning about my profession. But yeah, I think the CDC recommends 150 minutes a week of physical activity, which really isn't a lot if you think about it. What is that, like 30 minutes a day? 30 minutes a day. Oh my gosh, math. Yay! Okay, that was perfect. Yes, so 30 minutes a day of activity, walking outside with this beautiful weather, maybe doing some gardening outside and being physically active and getting your heart rate up so that your body can be conditioned. But yeah, that's kind of weird because you don't think of it, and there's things that contribute to heart disease, and so exercise is one of those things that decreases the risk, and only 30 minutes a day.
Yeah, and that's doable.
Yeah.
And I think, breaking that up, and, when we think about the different risk factors that can exacerbate the risk for heart disease, especially in women, they list that stress levels. We stress a lot because we have to take care of a lot of different things.
I wonder if women stress more than men. I wonder, you think about, like, if you go back to, like, 1950s, I think about, like, Leave It to Beaver and June Cleaver, and, like, it didn't seem like she had a lot to stress about because she was a housewife, but that kind of plays on your mental state. Like, if I had to stay home and only be a housewife or only, like, do stuff at home, I mean, a week for spring break, I was kind of going a little stir crazy. So I think it's valuable for women to be working or find a hobby or do community service or something so that you can alleviate stress and decrease your blood pressure. I think there's people need purpose,
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And so with that stress, that blood pressure, also if you potentially have high cholesterol, and then also weight status can come into play depending on what other factors are going on, physical inactivity. So I'm glad that you mentioned that movement piece. So there's a lot of different things there. And then also the nutrition piece as well. I think and Whitney, you thankfully are not on major streams of social media, so you've probably not had to see all of the issues lately or what I would call scandal around Gwyneth Paltrow and her health routine. So apparently she recently did this podcast interview, and she is being called an almond mom, which apparently is what the interwebs is calling an older woman who is obsessive about wellness. So she was talking about her health routine. For one, homegirl says she gets a good bit of her nutrition by hooking up to an IV. And then she'll fast through the morning, and then she'll have a lunch, and the lunch is normally just bone broth. What? And then she'll have a paleo dinner.
Oh wow.
And so everybody on the interwebs has been losing their minds. All these dietitians are like, oh my gosh, this is disordered eating and all the things. And so it's very interesting to me. So, from a health and nutrition perspective, I do love that because we do have a heightened sensitivity to, chronic health issues. We want to be more mindful of our eating, but we also want to make sure we're not taking it too far either, where it's this extreme of, well, then you're not really eating anything.
Well, and that kind of brings me to the fitness side of things, and this I don't want this to come across insensitive, and I don't want this to come across as offensive, but I have noticed, and this is similar to the Gwyneth Paltrow thing, but it's on the other spectrum. It's like Gwyneth Paltrow's over here drinking bone broth and hooking up to an IV. I believe that everybody's physical shape is true to them. I think it looks good true to them. I think that everybody is designed and built very differently. What I do have a problem with is us not taking care of ourselves and the media making it look like being unhealthy is okay. There's a difference between being who you are physically, and there's a difference between, being unhealthy. And that's kind of the opposite of this trend. It's like the nutrition trend with Gwyneth Paltrow is, okay, we're going to go to the extreme of I have disordered eating, and she's very thin, and she's she's always been that way, but getting a look at her life to be that way. But then there's this other side that is, you don't have to do anything. And if we look at the numbers and we look at the CDC, we do have to take some accountability for ourselves, just to be aware, even 30 minutes a day of exercise. So I don't want that to come across as insensitive, but just I feel like our listeners need to hear it from us that are in this profession. We work with a wide range of people. Being healthy is important.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you bring that up, because I think that kind of brings some clarification to what this health at every size paradigm is, because I think that people may be hearing about it and being like, oh, this means that people are endorsing, just have no regard for your health whatsoever, stay the size and shape you are. Whereas with health at every size, it means you can do healthy lifestyle behaviors regardless of BMI status, but you are doing health promoting behaviors. You're not just like not doing anything at all. You know?
And if you go to the doctor and they give you some readings back and they say, hey, with this type of change in your diet or exercising, you will see these numbers go down, and then you just happen to do it, you'll be like, oh, well, okay, that was pretty easy.
Yes.
You know, so just to throw that out there.
And I know we went all over the place there, but you know, it's still within topic.
Sure.
But so next things on the list, and I know these are things that we have talked about before. So number 2 is breast cancer. I know we've talked about that quite frequently. And Whitney, remind me, there's a group of breast cancer recovery folks that you've worked with, right?
Yeah, so over at the Rec Center, we actually work with DCH, and if you have been through recovery and you've had breast cancer, it doesn't matter like when it is, just as long as you're cleared from your doctor to work with us, we will give you a complimentary membership for Tuesdays and Thursdays to come to our little 30-minute class. And it's really cool because a lot of these survivors, you know, they haven't, like some have never done exercise before, so this is like their first step into moving their bodies. And then some are like only ladies that are like late 40s and 50s and they have been exercising, but they found a support group. So I mean, I think it's important to make sure you go to your female doctor yearly and get checked up. I mean, not just the top, but also the bottom, like make sure everything's in good working order, that, you know, you get tested if you're sexually active and all those things. So I think taking care of your sexual health is pretty important too.
I know that we're about to have to go on a break, but I know with breast cancer in particular, it was really interesting when I was looking at this article. When we think about those risk factors with heart disease, they're listing the same lifestyle risk factors for breast cancer. So the smoking, limited physical activity, you know, poor diet quality, alcohol use. So I thought that was really interesting. And of course, we know genetics comes into play, you know, family history, but I just thought like, well, once again, lifestyle behaviors. But anyways, we have more on the list, but we've got to take a break. You are listening to Fit2BTide with Sheena and Whitney on 90.7 The Capstone.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
Back, everybody. You're listening to Fit2BTide, and man, if we could only play on the radio what we say between takes, it would be a whole nother show.
It would be.
It would be.
You know, thinking back to something you said before the break when you were encouraging our listeners, you know, we want to get the top checked out, but also the bottom. That's a good segue because number 3 was gynecological health issues, so ovarian and cervical cancer. And again, you know, I think for maybe some of our listeners who are joining us, if you are college students, you may kind of have this thought of, well, that doesn't apply to me right now, because we often have this invincibility status. So unless you've experienced something where a close family member or close friend has gone through that, then that may not be on your radar to be thinking about the lady parts health. Yeah,
and I think, you know, as a college student, for females, I know it's like some females will go, you know, to the gynecologist when they're in high school, but like I feel like I would probably need to see a statistic on this, but I feel like most females probably don't really start doing that until college or possibly even right after, because like you said, you think you're invincible, so you don't think about having to go to all these different doctors. But you know, for our college age females that are out there, if you're going to go to any doctor, in my opinion, and pick one, you probably need to go to the female doctor. That would probably be the number 1 at this point.
Yes, and I think if there's any takeaway from this, and particularly within this topic, when you do go to the doctor, it can feel uncomfortable to be very transparent about the symptoms you've been feeling, but you do need to be transparent with them about that, and then also the degree of sexual activity that you've had, because that is going to be helpful for them as they kind of paint the picture of what they need to address for you and what you may be at risk for. And again, you know, it can feel very uncomfortable, but you don't want to regret putting off sharing information with your healthcare provider.
And it's not like it's the first time they've ever heard this. You know what I mean? Like I think when I started going to the doctor, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, it's like I'm the only one they've ever seen. And I'm thinking, no, they deliver babies. It's fine.
Yeah. It's like, they've seen it.
They've seen it.
You know, this isn't their first rodeo. It's going to be okay. So next one that's on the list that I thought was really interesting was depression depression and anxiety was number 4. And really, just thinking about the fact that depression, it affects our whole body. And, when we think about mental health issues in general, it is so multifaceted, but I know within our scope of nutrition and movement, that can come into play in both positive and negative ways. And more so talking about the negative with like nutrition potentially. But I mean, I just thought that was very interesting that depression and anxiety was on there. But I think even culturally and as a society, we've been talking about mental health issues a lot more frequently. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, mental health, I mean, it really wasn't talked about a lot. I mean, even when I was in school, I think when I became a professional in the field, and I know the Division of Student Life, we have services to help our students, and even the university has it for faculty staff, but exercise and nutrition are so important, and I would almost say for mental health, the exercise component almost would like trump nutrition slightly, because when you exercise, your body is designed this way to release certain chemicals. And so the moment you engage in physical activity or do some type of structured cardio or something like that, you're definitely going to release endorphins. I mean, we hear it all the time. It's not made up. Literally, it's real. I mean, the moment I feel terrible, but I just go walk the track, or I go outside, or I do something physical, there's a natural response to the body. Also, when you look at mental health, I firmly believe that people need to find some sort of higher power, because we can't do it on our own. Like, I think whether that is religious things, or whether you go to yoga and you can learn how to deal, but there's just more to life than just the food and just the exercise. There's like a trifecta of all these things. It's like our wellness wheel that we talk about. It's like all the things fall into place. And so there's a reason why we're all kind of depressed. And I think one of the reasons is we kind of work too much and put too much on our plate. And as a culture in America, that's what we do. We live to work. We don't work to live, which is what you should probably be doing. So I think that plays a lot of mental strain. Do a little exercise, 30 minutes.
Yes. And I think when we think about the topic of depression and anxiety specific to women, I can't help but think of postpartum depression also. And, unfortunately, when I think it's brought up in mainstream media, you always see stories of the most extreme forms of postpartum depression. So then women don't want to really share with their healthcare provider, or maybe even with their partner or other family members, that they think they might have it, because people automatically assume, oh, you want to hurt the child, or oh, you want to harm yourself, whereas it could just be a quote-unquote milder case where you're just kind of in a funk, and you need some assistance kind of recalibrating that chemical imbalance that happens.
Kind of what it is, like after you've had the baby, and then like you're kind of going through this phase of like the baby's born and you're living this life, but your life has now changed. Is it that? It's almost like this break of your life where you're like, oh, the excitement of being pregnant and doing this, but then when you get to that part, it's like mentally you have a hard time coping.
Yes, and there can be chemical imbalances that happen in there where you do want to be there for your child and do your daily task, but you're just at a point where you can't function at 100%. And then, you see the extreme forms in the media where, people are having manic episodes and then they feel the need to hurt others around them. And so I think that makes folks less likely to admit that they may have issues, because they're afraid that people are going to seem like
a bad person.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think really making sure that you are really advocating for yourself in your postpartum appointments whenever you're following up with your OBGYN, and just being transparent about that. Again, it can be scary, but you want to go ahead and intervene as early as you can versus feeling like it's building up and that you don't have that support system.
Yeah. Well said.
So
there you have it.
There's that. Now moving on, one of the other ones kind of along that was reproductive health issues. So really thinking more so around like PCOS and infertility and things of that nature. And that makes sense, because these are very specific to women, because men don't have the body parts for that stuff. So I think, even there with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, for those that may not be familiar with that acronym, certainly the use of physical activity and good nutrition practices can be therapeutic to that and really help supplement what your physician is doing too.
It's interesting, even when you think about like endometriosis, there's a YouTube channel I love to watch, and it was kind of featuring this one girl, and she couldn't get pregnant, and she was having to do infertility, but she had a really bad case of endometriosis. Well, she started doing rock climbing. So she started learning how to engage her core correctly. Not crunches. Crunches are not a super effective core workout. The core is like multiple muscles that work together to basically create strength in your midsection. And so if you think about rock climbing and having to lift your body weight and have core work, that is pelvic floor muscles, that's diaphragm, that's obliques, that's rectus spinae, that's abdominals. It's all these things, transverse abs. And her endometriosis actually went away because she started doing rock climbing. And so people that tend to do very core-centered activities like yoga, Pilates, rock climbing, stuff like that, where you have to use the center of your body, and work on pelvic health. It's like a really big field right now for Pilates practitioners is pelvic health and exercises so that you don't have to go to rehab to make sure that your pelvic floor doesn't, fire. It actually is really helpful. I almost wonder if it's helpful for people that get cysts, ovarian cysts, because I wonder if the muscles there can create some sort of, I don't know, barrier, who knows. But I know for endometriosis, that is a pretty big benefit to regular exercise.
And that is really fascinating, and the fact that endometriosis is so prevalent. Right. Or at least anecdotally, I know among peers, and then also with what the literature is suggesting too.
Yeah,
so,
isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
It's very, very neat.
Well, I think we should take a break.
Sure.
You are listening to Fit2BTide with Sheena and Whitney on 90.7 The Capstone.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
Welcome back. You're listening to Fit2BTide with Sheena and Whitney, and we're talking about ladies.
Yes, we are.
The ladies.
And now, Whitney, riddle me this.
Yes.
So I read once in an article, it suggested that walking is one of the best forms of physical activity for women because it helps with their posture. You can do it anywhere. You don't have to have any equipment. And I think they were kind of basically making the point that you don't have to go to this like fancy boutique gym or feel like you have to be on the elliptical to get your heart rate up to get that cardiovascular benefit. Now, would you agree that walking, like brisk walking, whatever, power walking, whatever that looks like, is a good form of physical activity for females?
Couple of things. Yes, I think walking is great for females. And there's ways that you can increase the intensity for walking. You could grab some hand weights. You could walk up the hill. You could increase your speed. There are variables that you can play with. One thing I don't love about running, when you're young, running's like fine or whatever. As you get older as a woman, things start to get saggy. If you have had kids and you've had to breastfeed, there are changes within your body. And I'll never forget when I was probably early 20s teaching at the rec center. I taught a boot camp class, and we were doing I was young and fit, so I was doing jumping jacks and high knees, and I could go for days. And then after class, this lady came up to me, and she must have been a faculty staff, and at the time she was probably in her 40s, and she made a joke. She goes, "Yeah, you'll never catch me doing jumping jacks." And I was like, "Really?" And she goes, "Honey, when you get my age, you do not want anything else to sag." And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of funny." But then I was like, actually, I could see how that's true because over time your skin starts to sag. If you do have some issues with your ovaries or your uterus, that's not going to feel super great. Joint problems, things like that. Now, when you look at osteoporosis, you do need to have impact. It's like this weird line. You do need weight-bearing movement and impact, and so jumping is actually a benefit, and it helps to prevent osteoporosis, but I would limit how much that you actually do. But yeah, I'm a fan for walking. Okay. I love power walking. Get your hips into it, loosen up your hips. Yes.
I've seen you power walk before across campus.
I used to could go really fast. Me and Nico would walk laps around campus, and I was a lot more I guess, fit back then than I am now. I'm like really talking myself down here.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a second. But no.
Different type of
yes,
yes.
Our bodies have changed.
Yeah.
So I understand. Now, what other form of physical activity would you encourage for women? Or I know you've talked a lot about strength training. Would you say that that's probably a really big thing that...
I think if I had any female come up to me, especially, I mean, honestly, when you're young, the more strength training you can get in your younger years before the age of 30, yes, you should be doing that. You should increase your bone density, but also it's going to help you if you are on that line for osteopenia, osteoporosis. Obviously, you need to be talking to your doctor if you have osteoporosis, especially if it's in your spine. Like, you need to be very knowledgeable if you are diagnosed with those things. But weight training is really good for females. And I like that nowadays there are more women in the gym lifting weights, and they're not caring too much about the whole bulking up, because you can bulk up if you want to. Like, there is a way to do it. If you're just a regular old female walking into the gym to work out 2 to 3 days a week, you are not going to gain muscle mass like a power lifter possibly, or even like, you know, the models that wear the little bikinis on stage. You're not going to get that way. That is a very precise way of doing it. So I want a lot of females to know, if you haven't started lifting weights, just go work out your major muscle groups, put some stress on the bones and the muscles, and it'll increase your metabolism and make you feel better.
I think that's a beautiful endorsement.
You won't get super buff. Let's just go out and say it.
Hey,
you won't get super buff.
You get toned. All the good things. And I love how much you talked about prevention of osteoporosis and osteopenia, because I think that that's a good segue for some of the things that I've been thinking about nutrition-wise that are specific to females when we think about, even certain nutrients, especially with vitamins and minerals, because as a dietitian, I often will get this question like, do I need a supplement? Like, if so, like, what does it need to be? And I think, you know, a lot of dietitians were a little weary of promoting a lot of supplementation, because we would rather you get all those different micronutrients from your actual diet. So when we're thinking about those different micronutrients, and we're thinking about things that you possibly want to supplement because you may not get in your regular diet, definitely calcium and vitamin D for that exact reason you mentioned with the osteoporosis. And what I would say specifically about calcium as a supplement, you are not going to get the daily calcium you need as a female if you try to get your calcium from just a general multivitamin, mostly because calcium as a mineral is just so large physically in and of itself. So if they were to put the daily amount of calcium you need in a multivitamin, that vitamin would probably triple in size. So you need your regular multivitamin, but then have a separate calcium supplement so that you can actually get that, especially if you're not necessarily getting 3 servings of dairy a day. But you can also get calcium from other sources, so fortified sources like cereal, some different soy products, and then also too, green leafy vegetables do also provide a certain level of calcium as well.
Good to know, because I don't eat as much ice cream as I used to, but I did eat a lot growing up. So I would hope that my bones are very strong from my ice cream eating. But I found that, like, I eat a lot of cheese. I try not to eat a lot of cheese only because it's saturated fat, you know, you just kind of want to be mindful thinking about heart disease, but like also cheese is pretty good for calcium, right? Does it have as much as, like, I know, like, I like the lactose-free milk because it's got a little bit more protein and it just lasts longer in the fridge.
Yes.
And I noticed that, like, that has some good levels in it, but like cheese is pretty good.
Yes, absolutely. Because really with cheese, and what makes cheese turn into more of what I'd consider a protein source versus like a glass of milk where there's carb and protein, is that when that cheese is formed from that dairy milk, a lot of that lactose is pulled out, that milk sugar, but you still have that calcium that is concentrated in there. So definitely, I'm a big advocate of dairy products.
That's how I justify eating lots of cheese.
Yes.
It's just good. It's a good quick snack.
It is, and it's cost effective.
It is.
For the most part.
It is.
I'm like, don't turn into like an egg situation with us where like the eggs went crazy.
I tell you what, the egg situation, we don't need that to get out of control anymore.
No, we do not. But thinking about some other nutrients specific to women, you know, when I was thinking about our show today, one of the other nutrients that we do need to be mindful of, especially if you're of childbearing age, is folate or folic acid. So it is a B vitamin, and it's important if you were to conceive a child because it prevents neural tube defects in babies, so birth defects in children. So it's always important for women to know that, and then to know where they can get great sources of folic acid. So that could be from green leafy vegetables like spinach. We can also get it from fortified sources as well. But fun fact with this, I actually, for my non-thesis research for my master's, I did a study on UA women that were living on campus, and I was asking them if they knew what folate or folic acid was, like where to get it. And because it had to do with the risk of birth defects and all that good stuff, I had to ask a lot of questions about other health behaviors, such as like sexual behaviors, because it's like, okay, you don't know where folic acid is coming from.
Do you know where babies come from?
Yeah, but then you're also like doing all these things when you're not using protection, you could have a baby.
Yeah.
So it was very, I would not have thought of that if that faculty member had not told me, hey, we need to ask this. And I'm a bit of a prude, and I definitely was back then too. So I was out of my comfort zone.
An experience, a life experience, I feel like. Well, and I know that like when you take a prenatal vitamin, they pretty much pack the folic acid in there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you almost have to take a vitamin or whatever, pregnancy vitamin.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of girls will take prenatal vitamins for like hair and nail growth.
I was just going to say, I wonder if like I should just take that just because. I used to take vitamins. I don't take vitamins anymore just because I got tired of like having to buy vitamins. And then I kind of wondered if it like actually was even working.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it could, and maybe it was like a multivitamin was very helpful, but then I never felt different when I didn't take it. So I did a little experiment, and like I thought, oh, this is making me feel better and healthier. And I think for me personally, it was in my mind because I tend to eat a lot of leafy greens anyway. I always have something green in the fridge. I got to have something green, especially if I eat something with a lot of fat. It's got to cut. So maybe I was just eating healthy and I just felt good anyway.
Well, and I think that if you were to start taking another multivitamin or any listener who's thinking about taking a supplement, unfortunately, dietary supplements are not regulated by the FDA. And so it can be a little bit dicey to know whether or not this company, it's making the claim like, oh, there's 1,000 milligrams of this nutrient in there. Is there really?
Yeah, that's
true.
So
you want to look for something that has a third-party seal of approval saying that it has been tested. So I think there's a couple of brands out there where if you see USP, I think it's USP verified or certified, that means that that third-party company has verified that the claims that are being made of like certain amount of like milligrams and micrograms of whatever is actually within that product. Because sometimes it can claim, oh, there's 1,000 milligrams of this, and if it were to be lab tested, it could only be half of that, which is really scary.
Kind of makes me nervous. That's why I just don't take anything like that.
Yes.
I just never know.
Yeah. So with that said, we're going to take a break. We're going to freak you out and take a break. You are listening to Fit to Be Tied with Sheena and Whitney on 90.7 The Capstone.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
You're listening to Fit to Be Tied with Sheena and Whitney, and we've had a great show. Our first real live show since spring break.
Yes.
And I think we killed it.
I think we did. You know, I'm kind of like, wait, what year is it?
Yeah.
Getting in my dentures. I can't.
Yeah. So this was kind of funny. Like during the break, I was talking to Sheena about like how like I'll randomly take screenshots of like little memes and stuff that I just find are really pretty. Some pretty, funny. Some are kind of pretty, you know, cute, whatever, little animals or whatever. But like there's some that I just find really hilarious, and I send these to friends, and I know they're like, quit sending these, but I think they're funny. There's one that I found, and this was pretty funny, and it says, the fact that there's a highway to hell and only a stairway to heaven says a lot about anticipated traffic numbers. And when I read that, I fell to the floor.
That's hilarious.
Isn't that pretty funny?
That is pretty funny.
A little controversial, but I mean, you know, It's funny.
It's funny. I'm like sitting here because I'm trying to think of like some recent memes that I've seen that I'm like, what could I share on the radio? And then also let me think.
Yeah.
But no, memes, they really make the world go round. I feel
really
like my love language is memes and GIFs.
Yeah.
Do you pronounce it GIF?
I don't
GIF?
know. I think it's supposed to be GIF, but I always said GIF. Okay, here's a funny one. This is not like horrible like that one, but this one is this squirrel, and he like has his arms stretching up to the sky like he's like talking to somebody, and it says, "Thank you, Lord. As the world gets crazier, the nuts get easier to find." I thought that one was pretty funny. I love it. Here's one final one, and then we can kind of close it out. And I thought this was like, oh my gosh, this is like seriously like makes sense. Okay, in 1998 we had the quote, don't get in the car with strangers. In 2008, we had, don't meet people from the internet alone. In 2019, we have, order yourself a stranger from the internet to get into a car with alone. Uber. How funny is that?
That is so good.
Because you don't talk to strangers, you don't meet people from the internet, but now we're actually calling people to come pick us up that we don't know.
Well, when we think about times changing, I'm thinking about one meme that circulated pretty heavily, especially during the pandemic, where it was basically like before COVID, people would cough to hide a fart, and now people will fart to like hide the fact that they're coughing. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's
I think we need to stop recording now. You guys have fortunately/unfortunately been listening to Fit2BTide. We hope you have a great week, and we will catch you next time.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.